my basic pretext essentially was there has to be a balance in the powers that are granted to a caretaker government. It was an election reforms bill, and the government had introduced some very substantive changes in the way the result management system is going to work. But the proposed change in the powers of the caretakers has overshadowed the entire good aspects of the election reforms bill, which should have been debated more extensively, because those provisions will have an consequence on the quality of the outcome of any election in any country. So what I was saying in my column, essentially, there has to be a balance between in the powers of caretaker government. The caretaker government shouldn't be all powerful, and they should not be assigned a role to make decisions that may have long-term consequences in a country. But at the same time, they should not be toothless, powerless governments, because they are governing a country, and they cannot have no powers to be able to manage a very complex governance in Pakistan, especially when we are facing with many economic challenges, and any shred of uncertainty will take us back to where we were six or seven the last year, on the brink of default. So keeping that in view, the changes proposed by the government and now approved by the parliament makes a lot of sense from a governance perspective. The caretaker governments have been given powers to deal with the matters relating to the agreements that have already been signed. They can make decisions regarding the continuation of projects under which a certain set of laws that has been defined in the change in the amendment as well. They can continue those projects. What we see as an election observation organization, we do not see a power that can enable a caretaker government to be making very long-term decisions which may have far-reaching consequences and things that the future governments cannot undo. So that was the entire pretext. The amendment should not be analyzed with the perspective of mistrust in which we live in. There's a whole stack of mistrust in this country. The way that previous elections have been contested, the role of state, and all that. I mean, we all are familiar with the debate, and we have been increasingly open talking about them as well. So these amendments should not be looked at from the mistrust perspective, but from a governance perspective, and they are important, and especially keeping in with very unique economic situation we are in these days. The proposed amendment only has given powers to the caretakers to deal with the economic issues. One of the earlier versions that I had seen also included national security, which was later taken off from the amendment that was approved. So the language of the amendment itself focuses on the increased powers of the caretakers in the ability to deal with the matters relating to economy, the international agreements, and all that. So that is the text of the amendment. The rest of the text in the Elections Act 2017 remains intact. For example, they are still not able to make posting and transfers without the approval of Election Commission of Pakistan. The primary mandate remains the same. Caretaker governments are there. Caretaker governments at the center and the provinces will be formed to assist the Election Commission in the conduct of an election that is fair, honest, just, in accordance with the law as violating the Constitution. Now, so that amendment is made within a larger text that defines the powers or no powers, or the restriction to powers of the caretaker government under the Elections Act 2017, and the powers that have been increased are only related to, and the language suggests, to the economic sphere. Well, caretaker setup is a government of Pakistan, right? And the government of Pakistan should have certain powers to govern. If they don't have powers, there's no point of having a caretaker government. Let Election Commission manage the election for 3 days. You cannot bring a country to a standstill and have a government with no powers. The symbolism of governments would always create a lot of uncertainty. So, I mean, it's a government, and it's a constitutionally mandated government. From 1990 to 1988, from 1990 to 2008, we have had governments which were at the discretion of presidents and the governors, the caretaker setups. But in 2013, we had a constitutional amendment. Now it's a consultative process. The leader of the House and the leader of the opposition of the outgoing assemblies consult their parliamentary and provincial assemblies committees involved, and in case they fail, then election commission appoints. Now, when the government is appointed through a constitutional process, it is not an interim setup appointed on a very ad hoc basis at the discretion, at the sole pleasure of a president, but through a constitutional process. So they are legitimate constitutional governments. Yes, I agree they should not have powers, they should not have tremendous powers, but they should have at least powers to exercise to manage the government of a very complex country with its own very complex economic and social realities. They cannot be just powerless governments because there has to be a government, so there has to be a symbolism. It doesn't work.